Hey, we're excited today to have Jordan Fourcher with us today on our podcast. I'm Jamison Manwaring. I'm co-founder, CEO of Neighborhood Ventures. We're a crowdfunding real estate company based here in Phoenix. And on this podcast, we get to talk to some of the up-and-coming entrepreneurs in the Valley and across the country who are doing cool things. And we came across Jordan from the Phoenix Business Journal, 10 individuals under 25 who are the biggest innovators. And so it's a really cool space because it's younger folks. Generally, starting something new is hard and takes time. So we're talking people under 25 and excited to have Jordan come in and talk to us more about his idea and development. I actually have it right here. And if you can see, if you're watching on video, you can see this looks like an iPhone, back of an iPhone, and that's because that's what it is. But before we get into it, welcome, Jordan. Thanks for being on with us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This is pretty cool. Nice office.
And as we were just saying, it's 10 under 25, but you're actually 22.
Yes, I am.
So
I'm 22.
You're ahead of the game. Getting into that group at 22 is really cool. And you also have a shirt that says Fourcher Tech, which was a prior company you had. When did you start that company?
Yeah, so I started Fourcher Tech back in, it was October 15th of 2020.
Okay.
I started that one solving kind of a same issue, but from a completely different approach.
Yeah.
So this company, I started to make a wireless charger that actively cools your phone. And I basically made it. It had a really small micro water cooling system about this big. The whole product was about this big. Micro water cooling system, thermoelectric plate, wireless charger, all in this really small, compact package, extremely powerful.
So how did, at 20, what got you interested in being able to actually create something? Because maybe a lot of us at 20 saw problems that would be interested to try to solve, to find a solution. But what gave you the confidence you could actually create something? Are you kind of a mad scientist? You do a lot of stuff out of your own house. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, from a young age, I was always, my dad kept, we had like a cabinet in the hallway, and he would keep just random electronics in there, wires, batteries, just random stuff in there. And he wouldn't be like, no, you can't touch that. He'd be like, yeah, go at it, make whatever you want. He'd show me how to make electromagnets and stuff like that. So from like a young age, I was always around technology and just electronics and all that stuff. So I was very comfortable working with just basic hardware. I understand how it works. I understand where it doesn't work. And I've also really always liked phones. I see phones as like, it's basically the epitome of human engineering. It's like, it's more advanced than the space station, honestly, because you see the space station, it's just like, they're just trying to keep the vacuum of space from exploding that thing. That's all you're trying to do with there. Just pressurization, which you've been doing with scuba diving tanks since the 70s. But cell phones, I mean, it's replaced like 80% of the tools that everybody would ever carry, cameras, typewriters, other computers, mobile phones, just phones on their own, pagers, so many technologies it's just collected.
Right.
So between my love of technology, like cell phones, and my knowledge of hardware, I figured, there's a problem that I face often, which is overheating phones, and I should fix that.
What was one of the first things that you created, as a kid prior to this? Does anything come to mind that you were like, I'm going to try this?
You know what? It's funny you ask, because I was going through my camera roll one of these days, and I actually found a very early prototype of a wireless charger or of like a phone cooling device that I made when I was I must have been like 14 or 15. And what I had done is I had taken the Apple iPhone 5 box, and I took a fan and I cut the blades of the fan so it would fit in there. And then I took the rim of the fan and put that inside. And then I took the batteries, hooked that in underneath, and I used rubber bands to strap the iPhone 5 on there. And it would cool your phone. It would cool the iPhone 5.
Wow.
And that was, I remember looking back on that, I was like, wow, I didn't do a very good job on that, the rubber bands. So.
Well, yeah, you definitely have a focus here then. It's around cooling. Where do you think that came from? Did you have like problems with your phone getting overheated and you were just like, there needs to be a solution here?
It's always been a long-standing issue. It doesn't matter what phone you have. I use iPhones, I use Androids, I even have Windows phones. Like it's like
You're the one guy with the Windows phone. So.
I have it's in a drawer. I don't ever use it because there's nothing you can do with it. But just between all those, it doesn't matter how nice your phone is either. They are all susceptible to overheating, both from internal factors and external factors. And your phone just stops working when it overheats, and this happens very often. Like even in cold places, like.
What's driving that? Because I've noticed sometimes my phone is fine and sometimes it's overheating. So what are some of the internal, external factors that drive
so
that?
there's actually 4 total factors. 2 of them are internal, 2 of them are external. So the 2 internal are your battery and your CPU. And the 2 external are direct heat, like direct sunlight, and then ambient heat. So usually your phone can handle one of those at a time. So let's say your phone's in the direct sunlight, but the ambient temperature is kind of low, and it's not doing anything with the battery or the CPU. Then it might be able to handle that pretty well, although direct sunlight's pretty harsh. Or let's just say maybe you're playing an intense game, but your battery's like chilling, and it's not in direct sunlight, and it can handle that. When you start combining factors, that's where things get out of control. Your phone cannot handle when you combine factors. So let's say it's direct sunlight and the ambient high temperature is high. That's where you have issues. That's where my product comes in.
So you usually see if it's 2 or more.
Yeah.
Then it's an issue, and if you have 3 or 4, it's a real big issue.
There's no way you can't have more than 3 without it. Even if they're at low levels, you can't even have more than 3.
And is there some temperature where the phone automatically just shuts down when it gets so hot?
It depends per phone, and it depends on the conditions. So if the phone is running like tasks, like you're taking pictures or something, which is very it's very harsh on the CPU. It uses a lot of power. Your phone will heat up a lot. Let's say you're taking pictures or whatever, and it's in direct sunlight and the ambient high temperature is hot. So you got CPU, battery to some degree, the direct and the ambient. You have all those going on. That's going to overheat your phone very quickly. And so the internal temperature of the phone is being measured at different parts of the phone. So the battery's got a sensor, the CPU's got a sensor. I mean, depending on what phone you have, they may have sensors in other places so the phone can keep, homeostasis going. It can figure out what's going on inside. I find that Android phones tend to kind of ignore the heating issue until it's like really bad, like dangerous, like physically dangerous to the phone, which is good for users in the short term because they get to get more use out of their phone.
Right.
But in the long run, it really hurts their battery and may cause other issues, maybe with like the storage or stuff like that with degradation.
Internal temperatures, what are the internal temperatures where it gets dangerous for a phone? I have no idea. I mean, my dog was sick recently. And I realized dogs tend to be a few temperature degrees hotter than humans in general. And her temperature was like 106, which was really high, but not as high as if a human, that we're running at 98.7. So now I'm just curious, do you know how hot it is a phone is normally?
So Apple suggests on their website that you shouldn't get your phone's battery hotter than 95 degrees. The optimal temperature for your battery when it's charging is 59 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Exactly. Or 60 if you want to round
in the
up.
Fridge, almost.
Almost, yeah. But that's the internal temperature. So
Yeah.
the internal temperature of the battery has to be there. The external temperature doesn't matter because that's just the outside.
Yeah.
And that's just in terms of battery health. I mean, the reason your phone also, it'll do something called thermal throttling if it gets too hot. And that can happen at all sorts of different temperatures. And it's completely software determined. So, I mean, Apple plays around with that actually sometimes. In some updates, they change where it throttles. Sometimes they don't. They actually got in trouble for that because they didn't tell people they were doing that. There was like this whole like thing about the iPhone slowing down, as it got older. Well, that's because Apple is trying to save those phones. Basically what happens is when batteries decay over time, they're not able to sustain voltages, and your CPU needs a consistent voltage. Otherwise, it breaks. Like you can literally break the thing if you don't have the right voltage going into it, either too high or too low.
So they were actually trying to preserve the old phones.
They were trying to make the phones last as long as possible.
Not trying to make people upgrade to the new ones, which is what everyone thought.
No, it's. I mean, like maybe as a byproduct, maybe it's a win-win. It's like, yes, it lasts longer or the upgrade. But at the end of the day, they weren't trying to make you upgrade your phone. They were trying to make it so your phone works and it doesn't randomly shut off.
So you made the first prototype when you were 14, so like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell us about your current company and then the kind of the evolution since the one that you created 8 years ago as you've had different iterations?
Yeah. So, I mean, my current company, Cryo Co, is actually where I'm doing something completely different than all these other prototypes that I've ever done, because all of those rely on active cooling mechanisms through electronics, whether it be fans or eventually heat sinks or radiators and water cooling systems. Any of those things, that was always the approach. And the problem with that approach is that it requires a lot of power and it's not portable. There's no way to make that portable. I mean, you can attach a fan to the phone, but just because of physics, it's always inefficiencies, and the inefficiencies add heat, and it's not going to work in your pocket anyways, so it's got to be out, and there's all sorts of issues. So as I was looking at different technologies, I stumbled across this technology, which is called radiative cooling. And it's passive, although I'd like to think of it as active, simply because of, it has like an active cooling effect. But it's passive in a way that it doesn't have electricity, and you don't need to put external stimuli onto it. So basically the way it works is it reflects, in layman's terms, it just reflects the light that hits it, the energy that hits it, into space. So long as you have a clear, unobstructed view of the sky, so glass, you can't actually use glass with it because glass absorbs IR. But anything other than glass, as long as it's low humidity, not a lot of clouds, just a clear view of the sky like it is for most of the year here in Arizona.
Then this device will refract or reflect the solar heat back.
Yeah, it'll into space. Yeah, because there's a little hole in the band in the atmosphere in the 8 to 13 micrometer range. And it's just a little hole there, and you can just send it through right into vacuum of space.
And this material is already out there, and you're kind of creating it as an iPhone case, or did you modify the material at all, the chemistry?
A little bit of both. So radiative cooling is not a new technology, although I'd like to think of it as like kind of like a lost technology, because now there's a few companies out there who are using this, but they're not really like successfully using it. My company, Cryo Co, is the world's first and only consumer-facing radiative cooling company, meaning that if you go to anyone else with this type of technology and you try to like hand them money to like buy their product, they have nothing to sell you. They don't sell to consumers. They only sell like big business deals or whatever to get contracts to do whatever.
For what use case?
Usually it's to make tiles. So this is technically a tile. Okay. That's why I call it the cryo tile.
Like for a building?
For buildings.
Okay.
Which is a space that I would like to get into, but I mean, I do have competition in that space to some degree. Whereas this space, it's just me. There's nobody else doing consumer-facing radiative cooling.
And obviously your use case is to be able to use it for a phone specifically, so that it keeps the temperature down. Now, the other three factors that can increase the temperature on the phone. Does this have any impact on those at all, or is it just the sunlight side?
So it's really just the direct heat. But I mean, in a large number of cases, that is like the main factor that causes phone to overheat. Because nowadays, iPhones have really good internal cooling mechanisms. Apple has done the best they can. Well, I mean, arguably they've taken away some thermal components, but also done some better efficiency things, yada, yada, yada. At the end of the day, iPhones overheat less often from their own, processes and battery and all that stuff than they did, 5 or 6 generations ago.
Yeah.
Like the iPhone 5 overheats like just when you're just taking pictures or something.
Right.
It's like bad. But now the iPhone, it does a little bit better.
Right.
The external, there's really not much Apple could do about that. They can change where it throttles, they can change when it throttles, but at the end of the day, they can't stop the sun from hitting it.
Yeah.
But this technology can do that. It can stop the sun from hitting the phone. So in direct sunlight, it doesn't heat up as much.
And how much does it cool the phone, if this is on the phone versus if the phone is there and it's sitting in sunlight, what's the temperature of the difference of the temperature going to be?
That radiative cooling material, theoretically, under ideal conditions, can get 15 degrees of cooling. Okay. In my experience with relatively good conditions, with relatively good conditions, I've gotten around 10 to 12 degrees of cooling with just that material.
Okay.
Under typical conditions, people should see around 10 degrees. Under poorish conditions where maybe it's very humid out or you got some clouds out, maybe 7. Under the worst case scenario, it's going to be like 1 to 2.
Okay.
The thing about this technology that's great, though, is that it's not going to hurt the heating. So it's not like there's any condition you can put it in where it's going to make it worse.
Right.
It's either not going to work under the worst conditions possible or it's going to work great.
So how do you see the use case? I mean, like my iPhone here, I have a case on it that also is as a wallet, and could that technology be built into the case like this so that it's, instead of this being whatever this is, plastic or rubber or mixture or whatever, it's actually just this material? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So I'm actually have designed. I haven't prototyped it yet, and that's simply because it'd be very expensive to do so. And I don't have the money or nor the time to spend on prototyping a whole new product. Especially when I have this one, I just need to take across the finish line.
So this one is just a stick-on.
It's just a MagSafe accessory for the phone.
Oh, and it's magnetized.
Yeah. So
okay.
if you have like a here's another prototype here. But this is closer to the case version, except for the sides haven't been covered yet.
Okay.
But if you hand me that really quick. Basically, is if you have like a MagSafe, so all the flat-sided iPhones, that's the simple way of putting it. Any iPhone that has like the flat edges, that isn't like the iPhone 5, but like the newer iPhones with the flat edges, it'll stick to all of those. Cool. Without the case, you don't even need a phone case on it. Yeah. And if you have a MagSafe compatible phone case, then it'll stick to that as well.
Okay.
And it's easy to put on and take off and all that stuff. And I do plan on making a full case version.
Yeah. What model of phone is that?
This is the iPhone 13 Pro.
Okay.
And I designed this prototype specifically for this phone, but I'm also going to, depending on what the demand is, I'm going to try to make it available for as many of these different types of iPhones, the minis, the Maxes, all that stuff.
Yeah. No, very cool. It's hard to build a prototype. A lot of people, that's where they stop. They start with a great idea, but the prototyping is so hard. How did you build this?
It took a lot of time and effort. This is like iteration number 10 or 12 right there. Each iteration costs a lot of money because you have to. The thing, I actually wrote my my thesis on R&D, which is research and development.
What thesis?
My thesis I was at ASU. I graduated and I was in the honors college there.
Okay, cool.
So my thesis was on research and development, and I've always loved R&D. I've always loved experimenting, doing the cutting edge of making things. As Elon Musk once said, if people don't make the things, there are no things, which is true. Everything in this room is a thing.
Yeah.
And somebody made it. Somebody designed it. Somebody designed that. Somebody designed that. Somebody designed the texturing for this couch. Somebody had to do it. And if nobody does it, then it doesn't exist. So that really inspires me to make things that don't exist, like this product. This has never been seen before. Like no one's ever made a radiative cooling phone case. This is it. Yeah. There's nothing I am improving upon. I had to design this all from scratch.
Did you work with a company to build it?
A little bit. So I went on. I did like 99% of the actual design myself. And then for some parts of it, just to validate it, to make sure like the curves are correct or all that other stuff, I hired a guy on like Fiverr just to like make like professional drawings of it, so that way I could hand it off to like patent people.
Yeah. And then the actual physical creation, how did that come about?
Yeah. So for my initial prototypes, I 3D printed them myself.
Okay.
But I found that my 3D printer just it doesn't have I have like a resin 3D printer, and that's not the right material. Yeah. I need specific materials to make this work.
Well, you need this material, right?
So yeah,
in the 3D printer.
So this one right here, this is actually the active side. There is ABS on the back. ABS is a very common, very strong consumer material. Your AirPods right there, those are made out of ABS. Strong material. This one's 3D printed, so that's why it's got all these lines in it. Top layer is polycarbonate. That's another very strong material. A lot of like alternatives to glass use polycarbonate. And then the inside is a radiative cooling paint. I did not invent the paint, but I have perfected the formulation of the sprayable version of it. It took a lot of time.
So that's the magic, is the paint.
Yes, the paint. Okay. The paint is the magic. It's very finicky. It's hard to work with. It's very difficult to work with. And without breaking some trademark things like that, the paint company supplied me, I can't say much more about it. But it's very hard to work with. It's extremely difficult to work with. So good luck to anyone trying to copy this, because they're gonna have to spend months, probably years actually, because it's going to take them a long time to figure that out.
No, that's very, very cool. And, we call those barriers to entry. So as you build something, the harder it is to build makes it more difficult for someone else to build. What do you think of Elon Musk, by the way? You mentioned him, so
I like him. I think what he's doing is very cool. I also have a goal of going to space. One of my goals, I tell people, and it's true, is that I want to own a Martian mining colony. Simply because, mining here on Earth is just not where it's at. It's really bad for the environment and for the people working too. It's expensive. It's really expensive because there's environmental regulations. It's inefficient because of environmental regulations. You can't use certain chemicals or whatever. It damages wildlife, and it's like, okay, you're removing forests and stuff. And I like forests; they're cool.
Right.
On Mars, there's nothing alive there. At least
Yeah.
we haven't found anything alive there. So you can use whatever chemicals you want. You're not going to kill anything.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it's like not like people live there, so it's not like if you blow up a mountain, no one's gonna notice.
Right.
So you can do all the mining you want there, and I think that would be a way to really, like, I guess I'm not really an environmentalist, but from an environmentalist perspective, it'd be like that's how you save the Earth is by doing all the shit on Mars.
Yeah, and using those materials here.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there's going to be a lot of use cases that as we dive into it, it's going to make sense to have, some colonization there, some mining, especially that we may find materials there that are vast that aren't here that we can use. So now that you have the prototype, have you gone beyond the prototype and started to build any to sell, or is that kind of the next step?
So right now I'm in the pre-order phase. So I'm trying to get people to pre-order my product. So it's money now, so I can have the capital to actually manufacture these and get them their product.
Yeah. So have you used Kickstarter or Indiegogo, one of the crowdfunding platforms for that, or how are you going about
So right now it's just straight through my website. I will be on those platforms. The problem with them is that they do not allow for renders. And all the things on my website right now are renders of the final product, which they're basically just the models that I'm 3D printing, but they're cleaned up and they look nice because they're rendered. My prototypes are not very pretty right now, simply because I suck at manufacturing. Like I'm having to learn all this stuff from scratch. I've never assembled polycarbonate into ABS using Weld-On 40. It's a 2-part adhesive. I've never done that before, so I'm learning. Every time I do it, I get better, but I'm still learning how to do that. I don't have the industry experience with that yet.
Yeah, that's not easy stuff
to
do.
But once I make a very pretty prototype, because again, Kickstarter allows for it doesn't allow renders. So once I make a pretty prototype, that's actually I can take pictures of, and it's not disgusting, no matter how functional it is. Then I'll do that campaign, so that way I have pictures of it and all that stuff.
Yeah, and so
that's important to
me. For folks who may not know, so crowdfunding came about 15 years ago with these platforms, and the original idea behind Kickstarter was they were trying to do an event, they were trying to do a concert, and the same problem that you have with a product like this, they came up against. They needed a bunch of cash to get it off the ground, and that's needed early on, but the cash typically doesn't come in from the revenue until the actual concert time. So they built a website, put up this event, and they said, hey, we haven't done this yet, but it's coming. If you'll contribute right now, then we'll give you a free ticket. Contribute $100 and we'll give you 4 free tickets to the event. And they had all the details around what it was going to be. And then they launched the website, and it actually ended up funding, and they ended up putting on the event. And they said, this makes so much sense. Now we can use the internet to bring in some capital early on for an event like a concert, and then they'd have the capital to finish the project, and the folks who contribute get some benefit from it, right? Not only do they get the tickets that they can go to the event, but they kind of are a part of that entrepreneurial process. So fast forward now about 15 years, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which is a similar platform, has evolved into a lot of early stage ideas, inventions, startups similar to this. I think this is a perfect example where you can put the prototype there, you can put the idea, you can describe it, and folks can do what's called reward-based crowdfunding. They can't get equity in the company. That's a security, so there's a whole different set of laws. But what they can get is a reward. And they in most cases, like what you're talking about, if they contribute early on, then later they can get the first product once it comes off the line. That's their reward. They get a free one. It isn't free because they've contributed early on, but it's not necessarily about getting a big return as it is about supporting new ideas and being on the cutting edge of the new stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, I've backed a lot of Indiegogo and Kickstarter projects, like a little too much.
Yeah. And you can do it with $10. You can do it with $100. You can do it with more than that. And it's fun, and you're also able to see all the people who participate. Mm-hmm. We do the same thing, except for with commercial real estate development, because it's the same idea with commercial real estate. Is you need a bunch of capital up front, and then once you get that project going and it starts generating cash flow, there's good returns. The only difference with ours is they are regulated securities, so you get a good return as an equity holder. But it's also a lot more compliance and stuff that's involved. But that's how those platforms work. And yeah, I think it's a perfect option for you. So you're saying they won't allow renderings. It actually has to be a real live physical product. Yeah,
and one of the things for me is like I have a lot of respect for people who design hardware products, really good ones. Like I love the design of the iPhone, not because I'm like an Apple fanboy, like many of my friends accuse me of being, despite the fact that I have more Android phones, but simply because like it's meticulously designed. Like every little millimeter of that thing is been like fought over, fretted over. From material selection to all that stuff. And if I were to just go on Kickstarter with some ugly looking prototype that doesn't look good and be like, this is for your iPhone, it's like dressing the most beautiful woman in the world with garbage. It's like no, I have to kind of honor this product design and do the best I can with my prototypes to make them look the best I can. So that's why I'm waiting till I have a really good prototype that looks really aesthetically pleasing before I show the world that.
And what do you think that would cost? Based on the research you've done so far, to get the type of prototype that you would like? What kind of dollar amount?
Each prototype costs around $500 to make. It's, the top layer is CNC polycarbonate, and that ends up costing like $200. Simply because it's such a specific shape, and I have bezeled corners and a very small piece of plastic. It's very difficult to make that. Final product will be very cheap to make. But in prototyping, it's a completely different ball game because you're using different manufacturing methods. At this point, I'm thinking if I don't mess up my next prototype, I should have it by late next week, and it should only cost me around $400. It's getting cheaper for me to do this as I'm refining the design. But
very cool.
It's still a process.
Yeah. So tell us about how you foresee the next year for this product.
Yeah, so because it's a product that gets colder in the sun without electricity and keeps your phone from overheating, it's going to be tough in the winter because humans are like monkeys and we only care about things that are right here, right now, immediate. The second it's cloudy, like a day like today, people are going to be like, oh, I don't need that. And it's like, even if it's like 100 degrees the next day, 115 degrees the next day, and they know it's going to be, they're still going to be like, I don't need that. And then the next day when it's 115 degrees, it's going to be like, oh my God, I need it. Where it's like, if it's not happening right this minute, people don't care. So that's why it's getting through the winter is going to be a little tough. But then again, in Arizona, we don't have seasons here. It's going to be like 90 degrees till like late November. So I'm going to be still getting sales, getting pre-orders up until then. The goal is hopefully, I think I will, but we'll see. Hopefully I get around 1,000 pre-orders in about the next month. That's the minimum I need to begin manufacturing of just one version of the case. If the sales are continuous and they're continuously growing, I can actually start before then. I want to get that done by like November or December. So that way I actually have stuff made by the start or sometime during next summer when I plan to ship them out.
Cool. Yeah. And what is your website if people want to do a pre-order or look at more?
It is cryox.co. Not com, just .co.
Okay. Great.
cryox.co, cryox.co. There's no hyphen, none of that stuff, just cryox.co.
How are you thinking about pricing?
Pricing right now, it's only $40.
Okay.
Which is really cheap for, something of like that does this. For like a really well-made product like this, only $40 is really good. It's 11% off, so $5 off what the normal sale price is going to be. So pre-ordering gets you that kind of discount. And also, I might throw in some goodies there for anyone else who pre-orders. I might throw in stickers, shirts, whatever. We have a full merch page that we're building out right now. My design team who came up with the website and all that stuff, they're fantastic. They're doing like a full stack design. They're coming up with this really, really cool merchandise, like towels and stuff. I would get it if I didn't even know what the product was. It just looks so cool. So,
well, yeah, this is exciting, and we wish you luck as you plow through this journey. We know, entrepreneurship is an adventure, and it's fun. You're in the wilderness doing new stuff, finding new solutions, and we're excited to see what you can do over the next few years. So thanks again for joining us today. And if you're interested in learning more about the product, we'll also have your website on the show notes. So folks who are listening or watching can click on the comments or the show notes. You'll see the website and click right into it.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions about this product, there is a contact form on the page. Feel free to shoot me an email. I will be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Awesome. All right. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.